Should be live any moment. Yep, and we're live. What's up, Ross? How are you, man?
What up, Luke? I mean, I'm doing good. I had a leg day yesterday, and I'm not gonna lie. I've gotten a little cocky lifting weights lately. I'm starting to break down some mental milestones. So I'm starting like now that I'm getting over some of these hurdles, I'm trying to see how far I can take myself. And there is times when I'm going, okay, maybe slow down just a little bit, right? It's good to be confident. It's good to build that back up, but at the same time, it's not good to say, oh, you know what? I broke 500 on leg lift, so let's go ahead and go for 750, right? And that's what I did yesterday. And now my legs this morning were telling me, hey, you go ahead and go fuck yourself with all that.
You said this in chat. I have to ask again. What is a leg lift?
So a leg lift is the machine where you lay on your back and the weight is above you and you're bringing it down to your chest and back up.
Yeah,
leg press, leg lift. So I know it's not the manliest lift that you can do, but with my back, with the limitations I have with my back, it's a lift I can do without possibly re-injuring my back. So it is one of the lifts I can do. Like deadlift, squat are kind of like I can do squats as long as I don't get crazy with it. But anything where like I'm putting a lot of strain on my back is just something that I have to avoid.
Yeah, I totally agree. I stopped doing squats I stopped doing anything in the gym about 2 months ago thanks to Corona. The gyms are closed now here. But yeah, I decided about 6 months ago that like I was doing a lot of squatting and I just started getting some lower back pain, and like I really, really focus on form. I'm not one of these idiots that's just like loading up huge amounts of weight and then, just kind of trying to slam it home, And after that, dude, I was like, fuck this, like it's too risky. I'm not trying to go compete at a power lift competition. I don't need to be an NFL caliber running back. It's like I'm in it for the longevity. And so, yeah, I do like, as far as I'm concerned, if you can't do like 20 sets of 20 body weight squats or like front squatting sandbags and walking lunges and Bulgarian lunges with dumbbells, like if you're that strong that none of that is even challenging to you, unless you're an elite level athlete or you're training for some specific purpose like powerlifting competition or something, I just think squatting and deadlifts, as far as I'm concerned, are just, they're too high risk for me. Or if you're training for a bodybuilding competition or something, like it's just, I don't know, it's just too high risk. The risk versus reward. It's like the same reason I don't ride a motorcycle. I get it, it's fun, but for me personally, the risk versus reward is not worth it.
And I'm the same way with you on motorcycle. So like I wanted a motorcycle when I was a kid. Like when I was 18, I was all set to go buy one, go to the Harley dealership and get me one. And I mean, I went up there, priced one out, had the loan, could have got it. And fortunately, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she just kind of looked at me and said, think about it. I'm not telling you not to do it, but I'm telling you, think about it. And I sat back and I said, yeah, I probably would. So I'm sorry. My wife just busted in, and it's great news. My brother-in-law has officially just received his Ranger tab. So we are super excited over that because he's been working towards that for a long time. So congratulations to my brother-in-law for finally getting his Ranger tab. He'd been recycled twice because of peer reviews. So he had gone back through several of the phases twice just because of peer reviews.
I presume this is Army Rangers.
This is Army Rangers, yes, Army Ranger School. So he's working towards Special Forces.
I wasn't sure if he was in the Army or playing baseball.
No, not the Texas Rangers. I'd be super excited over that too. Don't lie. His dad played for the Houston Astros. So in the minor leagues, his dad was an Astro in the minor leagues for several years. But back to what we were talking about. Sorry about that. The aside there. My wife just busted in, and I'm super happy for him because this is one of my brother-in-laws I actually like. I'm not to the point where I want to do stuff like that because like motorcycles, I would kill myself on a motorcycle, right? I'm not skilled enough at riding motorcycle. I don't know enough about it. And I would, again, just like with lifting weights, I would, I'm great at this. And I'd go take off and try to do 100 miles an hour. And yeah, you hit something at 100 miles an hour on a motorcycle. It's just, you're dead. That's the only real option there.
Yeah, totally.
So I was at Northgate in College Station, and I was going down University towards Texas. And like right next to the Dixie Chicken. Like if I'd have looked to my left, there would have been the Dixie Chicken. And this motorcycle just goes past me, just hauling ass down the strip, right? And it's a crotch rocket. And the dude is just going as fast as he can go. He doesn't give a shit about red lights. He's just weaving through, going. And it's kind of downhill there. So you can see all the way to Texas from there. And I just watch him go. And he gets to Texas, and the Suburban pulls out because they have a green light, and they're turning, and he broadsides this Suburban enough to roll the Suburban over on its side. He launches like out of a catapult, and I got up there, and I was talking, to one of the guys there, and they basically told me he was dead before he hit the ground. Right. Like, yeah. I mean, his, like, just the impact of hitting the Suburban and his body, the way his body, that's like, he was dead before he hit the ground. Like, obviously this guy just either was trying to commit suicide and this was the way he wanted to go out, or he was just completely a fucking moron and didn't realize what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, straight out of the gate, we've already got a comment. So, Olga, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your last name because I will fail miserably at it. But she says Georgia will never certify after the video footage of election fraud. What say you, Ross?
I say we've already seen them certify Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona on what is worse information, what is worse data. So yes, the video in Georgia looks really bad, but we actually don't have any specific proof that there were uncounted ballots in those boxes. We don't know for certain. It looks bad. It definitely does. It definitely looks like there was ballots. It definitely looks like it was chicanery, but there's no definitive proof of it. And the Georgia Secretary of State has already come out and said, "Oh, that's perfectly normal. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing to see here. Go about your day." So I don't think we'll see any issues with the state of Georgia certifying the election results there. I'll be fair, and I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to put you where I am. I'm at 5% right now. Like, that's where I am. I'm at 5% that there's any chance that Trump has of coming back from this.
Okay, and so you're saying not 5% for Georgia specifically, but 5% in general.
5% overall. 5% overall. There's a 5% chance. Or there's just too much to overcome, right? Like, even if he flips Georgia, that's not enough. Even if he flips Arizona, that's not enough. He has to flip 2 of them or 3 of them, depending on which mix you get. And it doesn't seem likely. I agree. There's a lot of really bad data here. There's a lot of data that looks really bad. And there's definitely the need for full audits, not just recounts, because a recount is just counting the ballots that are there. We need to audit those ballots and make sure that those ballots are actually good ballots, that they should count, not that they exist, but that they should count. But at the moment, I say January 20th, it's a 95% chance we're swearing in Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but that's where my head puts me at.
Yeah. Here's why I think Supreme Court is our only hope. Because we talked about this on HSP yesterday. Russ and I did. And by the way, thank you everybody for tuning in. Be sure to comment, chat, and actually, we didn't even drop socials. You can find us on the stream. You can find our handles, but you can find Ross on Twitter at Ross Schumann, SCHUMANN. You can find me on Twitter at LUKEFAHRSKINNER, and you can find everything that we do at zero-gravity-media.com. And feel free to send us feedback either in the chat directly or at zero-gravity-media.com/contact. Here's why I think Supreme Court is our only hope, because Mark Elias has gone around suing basically every state, even states they knew they were going to win, like Tennessee. I don't know for a fact. I said on HSP, and I regret saying this, but I said that he sued all 50. I don't know for a fact that he sued all 50, but I know he sued most of the states in the United States and basically broke down their signature verification standards. So even if you do a recount, even if you do an audit, you're auditing those ballots based upon a signature standard which is so low that it's meaningless and irrelevant.
Yeah.
So for, I believe it was Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, the signature verification standard is so low that it's like you're comparing like if there's a signature on file that you have, and then you're comparing it against the ballot, which is literally just a straight line across. It's like an irregularity. It's not, you can't just toss it out. So it's like even something like that can go. So even if you audit, it still doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The Supreme Court is going to have to step in, and they're going to have to say, no, this is bullshit. You have to have real standards in place for signature verification. And they're going to have to do it on the basis of making sure that people's rights are respected, from one state to the next. Yeah, I agree, man. It's a really tricky situation. 2 weeks ago, I was like 20% positive. Last week, I was like 30%. This week, I'm like 5 to 10%. And that has a lot to do with a live stream I listened to of Robert Barnes, who defended the Covington kids.
Mm-hmm.
I should put that in the stream, because it was really, I learned a lot just on it was like a quick 20-30 minute stream, of just how far out ahead the left was on this than the right. And I truly believe that the right's legal team, the Trump campaign legal team, was asleep at the wheel. And I think that the mainstream Republicans are not really doing anything. They don't really care. They just want plausible deniability so they don't get gulagged later.
Yeah.
And Trump campaign is largely, by and large, out in the cold by themselves at the moment. And after this Robert Barnes live stream, I'll see if I can find it as you respond, Ross. But after listening to that, I was like, man, this is not good.
The problem for me right now is we keep seeing this. Oh, they're 1 for 42, they're 1 for 43, whatever number. The Trump campaign has actually only filed 3 lawsuits. So they're not 1 for 43. The problem is we don't have this concerted effort on the GOP. So when we get the left, when they get something like this, the left goes into lockstep mode, right? Where they all are pushing towards the exact same goal. We have so many things right now, so many different sides happening at the same time. We have L. Lynn Wood, we have Sidney Powell, we have the Trump campaign, we have some other people. All of this it's too much, right? It's distracting, and what it's causing even people like me to go, I just don't care anymore, right? Because there's so much information, and a lot of it is subjective, or at least is not 100% identifiable. So you get this overload. You get this point where you're saying there's just too much shit to pay attention to anymore. So we have the Georgia case where we have the suitcases. Then we have the lady with supposedly handing over a USB. Well, it could have been a lighter. We have, we have Michigan, we have Arizona, we have Pennsylvania, we have all these different things. And we don't know, what is Sidney Powell? What is L. Lynn Wood? And now what we're starting to see is too much infighting amongst the GOP. We're starting to see Dan Crenshaw go after L. Lynn Wood. We're starting to see Sidney Powell go after these people. We're starting to see the Trump campaign go after these other people. It's not a concerted effort, right? And it's what you said. They were asleep at the wheel, and now they're just trying to shotgun it. They're just trying to hit everything at once, and it's too much. And I think the American public, the general American public, there's about 25% that are probably like tuned into this, and they're really, really, really honing in on it. But there's also like people like you and me who would normally probably be very on this and be very, very gung-ho about it, that are starting to get information overload. And it's just going, okay, we need to step back and formulate an actual concise, this is the branch we're going to go on. This is the fight we're going to fight. This is the route we're taking, all of us together.
Yeah, I think there's upsides and downsides to this, to what's happening right now. I think the upside is that I think this is a one of those situations in which chaos works to our benefit, because it stretches their resources thin. So when you've got Lynn Wood going after them, when you've got, and yeah, by the way, so it's actually 4 suits. They've overturned 3 Trump lawsuits, but Trump still has a 4th one that has not been overturned. Okay. And then, yeah, the other 40 some odd lawsuits are made by all kinds of different people: Sidney Powell, Linwood, citizens themselves, you name it. So when they say, oh, 1 for 40, something, the Trump campaign's actually 1 for 4.
And the basic reminder there is they only need one, right? They need one per state is all they need. They don't need 10 per state to overturn the election. They need one in Georgia, one in Pennsylvania, and the election swings. We'll see if they get it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not counting my chickens until they hatch in that respect. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. I totally agree with you. I think that and this is a situation in which chaos helps us because it stretches the left's resources thin, and it makes it difficult for them to react quickly and effectively. I think that's a good thing, but I also agree with you. Just as a general strategy, the right is absolutely terrible at presenting a unified front. They're it's kind of their own virtue works against them in the sense that everybody wants to be right. Everyone's interested in the truth. And they're more interested in that than they are presenting a unified front. Whereas the left doesn't care. They know that they're evil. They know that they're doing the wrong thing, and they don't care. They're just out to present a unified front. So I think our virtue in that respect, in general, on the right, providing an overall strategic messaging and approach, is where it works against them sometimes. And I don't know, maybe this is a situation where it actually works in our favor, but I don't know. I'm not convinced that it is. And I'm kind of like you. There's so many things that I'm learning right now just about the courts. Like, for example, that the Federalist Society is not a good thing. Learning that the Federalist Society basically has a monopoly on who gets appointed for federal judges. Learning that those three suits that were that the judges that overturned the 3 suits of the Trump campaign were all 3 Trump appointed judges. I don't know if you listened to the stream last night, Ross, but one of them was on leches grounds, which is basically like, oh, you've already had so much time to defend your rights and sue over this that now it's too late. You can't come to the party this late. That was a Trump appointed judge that did this, So these 300 some odd judges that Trump has appointed over the course of the last 4 years are 300 some odd cocks at the end of the day. Maybe there's a few mixed in here and there that aren't, but I am, I'm pretty black-pilled in general on the whole courts. And I don't think that this is why I say we have to get to the Supreme Court with this. We have to get to the Supreme Court. I'm convinced at this point that the Supreme Court is Obi-Wan. You're my only hope.
Yeah, and I think the Supreme Court would give us a better option, but I still think we need to have a very concerted, this is the strategy we're going to the court with, right? Yeah. This is the issue that we're fighting for. Is it signature verification? Is it that, the state of Pennsylvania changed their laws at the very last moment, which gave Democrats a concerted benefit? I'm not saying any of these are wrong. I don't want anybody on the stream to think that I'm saying, it's all bullshit and the Trump campaign has no argument. I think they have an argument. But like you just said, the courts, and I think to push back on what you said a little bit, that chaos helps us. It's the courts are helping the Democrats by simply just tossing our suits out. So they're not really having to go fight them, right? Like in Arizona, the Democrats literally made the argument that they can count dead people's ballots because they could have been cast before the person died. And the judge agreed with them.
Yeah. That's unbelievable.
So you're literally going, okay, well, we can't go look and see if any of these were dead ballots cast because, well, they may have died, and that's not something we can look into. And it's like, no, that's exactly something you should look into. That's Absolutely. Exactly something we should see if it actually occurs. But I just look. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm giving it a 5% option, which means I'm saying it is possible, right? There is a line that gets us there. I just think it's slim. I think the Trump campaign has to walk a very narrow path, and I think they're very quickly running out of time unless Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona's state legislatures pull the trigger. And that's right now, that's the best scenario in my mind is that those 3 state legislators just say, hey, you know what? there was enough evidence presented to us in these hearings that we've had with Giuliani and all these other witnesses that came in and talked about shit they saw that makes us say we want to recall the electors and we want to submit our own. And that's perfectly legal. It's perfectly within the rights of those states to do. The state legislatures have the power to do so, but they have to do it. And they have to call a session. They have to come and vote on it, and they have to make it happen. And right now, we're just not seeing enough. This morning there was a report that Arizona may do it. Well, I've seen reports each state may do it, but I haven't seen that they will do it or are in the process of doing it. And that's where I am. Until I see, like you said, until I see some proof in the pudding that they're actually going to do this, it's just all noise.
Yeah. I tweeted out like a week ago. I was like, I'll hold the line while patiently waiting for is going to or may to turn into has been.
Yeah.
So what do you think the likelihood of the state legislature stepping in and doing something about this actually is? I say very, very low.
I say very, very low as well. I say we're probably, to get one of them, there's probably a 20% chance we get one of them to do it. But again, one of them doesn't do us any good, right? One of us, it'd be great to just get one, because if one goes, then maybe it pushes the other ones over. But I'd say overall to get two of them, which we would need, there's probably a 2 to 5% chance that two of them will actually step forward and do what they need to do. There's maybe a 20% chance that one of them does. Right. And then I'll if one of them does it, I'll come back and maybe change my percentages. But right now, that's just where I see it. And again, this is purely opinion, right? I'm not running any kind of model or doing any kind of, analysis on this. This is just simply numbers off the top of my head where I feel comfortable pegging these numbers. If I was to bet on this, these are the numbers I would feel comfortable betting it at.
Okay, well, let me shift topics a little bit here. If anybody has any questions about that, post it, or comments, post it in the chat. We're happy to address those. What do you think? Because Russ and I have talked about this at length on our show. What, in your opinion, is the path forward for our country? Let's say Trump loses he didn't lose the election, but let's say he is not inaugurated in January.
Yes.
What do you think? I mean, I hear a lot of people talking about like, oh, there's no coming back from this. If the election system is fundamentally compromised, we've lost our country. Where are you at on all this?
So I don't think that's true, right? Because I'm sorry, we say this every time, and this is the kind of stuff that gets people just, it's fatigue, right? It fatigues people when you just constantly say shit like this. I think we're at the point where we definitely aren't going to, and a lot of it hinges on these runoff elections in Georgia, because if we win even one of those Senate seats in Georgia, Biden's first 2 years are basically null and void, right? He'll basically not be able to do anything for 2 years, which is great. That's what we want. He'll be able to push some executive orders. He'll be able to hurt my industry, oil and gas, because he only needs, he doesn't need the Congress to do any of that. He simply just needs executive orders, right? A lot of people, he can't do anything without Congress. And I simply went and printed him the map of the Bureau of Land Management and how much of oil land is on Bureau of Land Management land. And I said, with a snap of his fingers, he can turn off fracking on every bit of that land, right? Yeah. He can simply just say no fracking on any of that land. And it's basically all of New Mexico's oil field, right? So Texas produces a lot of oil, but in the Permian, a large segment of the ongoing production in the Permian right now is in New Mexico, southeast New Mexico, from Carlsbad to Jol, those regions like Hobbs. That's where the oil field in New Mexico is right now, and he can turn that off with a snap of a finger. All he has to do is tell whoever he appoints over the Bureau of Land Management, Department of Interior, nope, no permits can be issued for fracking on that land, and we're screwed. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people aren't talking about, because I hear a lot of people talking about, if we retain this Senate seat, then it's all good. It's first 2 years are null and void. But what you just mentioned is important. There are all these executive orders. He's going to ramp up the EPA again. The EPA is going to start suing the shit out of oil and gas companies. Things are going to be slowly becoming more expensive again. Gas prices are going to rise. I mean, there's a reason you've been enjoying there in the United States. I mean, we haven't really in Europe, of course, but why you're enjoying such low energy costs in the United States. There's a reason for that. That's because Trump all but decimated the EPA and got all the lawsuits against all these oil and gas companies dropped so they can actually start working again. There's reasons for this stuff, and that it's all of this sort of hidden stuff that nobody talks about, all the regulatory, all the regulations, all the lawsuits against companies and all this crap.
Streamlined a lot of the permitting processes, for actually permitting to drill oil and gas wells. Guys, it's not as simple as, hey, I have a rig and I want to go drill a hole, right? Like it is by and large an undertaking to get an oil well approved to drill. It's to the point where in California, they can't drill new wells. They're doing everything they can to re-stimulate old wells because it's so difficult to get a permit to drill a new well in California that it's not even worth their time. So they're spending millions of dollars to re-stimulate old wells that aren't giving them nearly the production a new well would, and that are in very bad shape. But this is what they have. This is what they can do. This is the only options they have are to go open these wells from the 1950s, 1960s and try to make something out of them, because they're just not going to be allowed to drill new wells.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that in New Mexico. We're going to see that exact same thing happen in New Mexico, which is 30 to 40% of the Permian Basin is in New Mexico. So you're going to see that land is going to become almost impossible to drill on. And if we do drill, we're not going to be able to frack it at all.
Yeah, totally. Well, you had a couple other topics that you wanted to talk about. What's on your mind?
Well, so I wanted to talk about the market, like the stock market a little bit, because this is funny to me, right? Like the stock market went up basically on the news that Biden would not have very much, even if he won the presidency, that he wouldn't have that much power, right? And so the stock market went up, and we've seen, of course, we had a couple of simultaneous events happen, right? Number one is we got recognition that the vaccine would work, that there is a suitable vaccine. We got news that basically Biden's entire first 2 years would be limited to what he can do. There's stuff he can do, but it's very limited, right? He's not going to be able to pass a Green New Deal. He's not going to be able to pass universal health care. He's not going to be able to pass a lot of this stuff. He can hurt the oil and gas industry. He can slow down gun manufacturing. He can do a lot of things like that, but he's still going to be quite limited, which is preferable, right? At least let's limit him as much as we can. So we've seen the stock market resurge, and of course, everybody from the left said, "Oh, Joe Biden's great for the stock market," and it was like, he's not even the president yet, right? None of his policies have been put in place. How is it? And then we saw just the other day, Nancy Pelosi comes out and says, "Well, thank God for Biden, we got a vaccine." It was what? Like, how? What shit are you smoking now, lady? Because Biden. If you want to say, okay, that Trump's not responsible for the vaccine, fine, that's your prerogative to say that, even though he spearheaded Operation Warp Speed, which definitely got us a vaccine much faster than we could have otherwise. But Joe Biden was not in government at all, like in any facet, shape, or form over the last 4 years. He had no government position at all. So he had no ability to affect whether or not we got a vaccine or not. And now they're trying to give him credit for developing the vaccine when clearly you can say that it's not Trump, but it clearly happened under Trump. You definitively cannot say that Biden was the reason for that. But that is why we saw the market. So I had a guy arguing with me. He's like, "Oh, it's definitely Biden." And I printed him the stock market curve. And I said, "Okay, this is when we got news that the vaccine was coming up. You see this rise. Here's when we got news that Biden would win. It dipped. Here's where we got better. We got the Moderna news. It rose again. Here's where we got more confirmation that Biden would win. It dipped again. It has dipped every time that we've gotten more assurance that Biden will be the president. It has not gone up. It has gone down, and then has had other outside factors that have caused it to rise, which mostly were around the vaccine. And then, of course, we had the OPEC come to another agreement that they were going to keep production low, which helped oil and gas prices.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this it's just hilarious to me. The people who claim these ridiculous that make these ridiculous claims are so intellectually dishonest. It's you know, they're just it's not a matter of ignorance. You know, I've said this many times in the past, but people are always wrong for one of two reasons. They either don't know or they're dishonest. And these ridiculous claims are pure dishonesty. This is not a matter of ignorance. This is pure dishonesty.
It is. It purely is. It purely is to the point where they're just going to claim anything at this point, and they know that they're not going to get any recourse. That somebody will agree with them, somebody will tell them they're right, and they're just going to use the power of the mob to basically will their way down and tell you that you're wrong and that they're right. And for them, it's not about data. It's about whether or not they can get enough people to agree with them to make it say, oh, see, all these people agree with me, so I must be right. Well, having a bunch of people agree with you on bad information doesn't make you right? There was a whole lot of people that used to think the earth was flat. They were not correct, but they would have literally beat you to death for saying that they were wrong. So it wasn't that they were correct at any point in time. They were all simultaneously combined wrong, but they were willing to kill you to protect the fact that they were wrong. The Catholic Church famously would excommunicate or burn you at a stake for saying the earth was not the center of the universe. But at the same time, the earth is not the center of the universe. We now know that to be definitively true, but if we would have just simply gone with the science of the time, well, it's science, it's proven science, we would have never found out this actual information that actually makes us better. We would have just continued down the primrose path of, well, it must be true because all these people agree with it.
Yeah. I mean, just as a quick aside, I mean, in this particular example, everyone credits Galileo for proving the earth to be round, but actually Aristotle had already asserted that in his writing On the Heavens 1,000 years before Galileo. Mm-hmm. The Greeks had already determined the sun to be the center of the universe and had already predicted, not only did they already know in classical Greece around 5th century BC, not only did they already know that, actually it was a little bit later as Hellenistic Greece, but I'm getting into the weeds here, that the earth was round, but they had two different Greek scientists that actually predicted one of whom predicted it to a margin of error to 2% the circumference of the earth using a stick.
Yeah.
So you can go really far back and you can become a very low information person very quickly to the extent that you become increasingly dishonest. And the Catholic Church has had to really quickly catch up on its scientific understandings of the world around us as a result of that. So you have to be very, very careful.
Well, the thing that I always say is that I reserve the right to change my mind if presented with new information, right?
Absolutely.
We get this bucket of information, right? And we think that this is all the information we need to make a decision. And then it turns out that that's not all the information, that there's new information that either contradicts or confirms the previous information. And then you either get more into the confirmation of what you had before, or you say, oh, wait, okay, this other information isn't quite the same. Let me look into this and see how this affects my overall opinion, right? And we saw that on the not Trayvon Martin,
George
the kid
Floyd.
George Floyd, but also the kid in Ahmaud Arbery, right? We got We got this first bit of information, and it looked like Ahmaud Arbery deserved it. And then as you peel back the onion, more information comes out, and you're going, wait a minute, okay, no, I don't agree with that. I do think that was not right, and right, you really have to fight confirmation bias, and everybody does, right? We all want to be right. We all want to be smart. We all want to think that we have all the information and that everybody else is an idiot and we're just better than they are. But when you start just getting into that echo chamber, when you start just confirming your bias, then you're not learning, right? And what you're doing is you might even be getting stupider in the process because you're denying the existence of information that may counter what you believe.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that. I mean, I don't think that's us fighting our own confirmation bias. I think that's us sifting through all the left's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have confirmation bias in that. We're just honest, and we're presented with the tsunami of events and information that the left is pushing through mainstream media and other sources, and we're having to sift through it all. There's a propaganda tactic. I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, Antifa and BLM use two different types of propaganda tactics. One of them, oh gosh, it's propaganda by the deed, which is sort of lending moral credence to going out and destroying things, and people see that and they go, oh God, they're fighting for the cause. What am I doing sitting on my couch? I'm going to go join them. And this is the same with like Red Army Faction, and a lot of these Antifa type groups in Germany, which is why Antifa now in Germany is considered I was thinking about this earlier, Ross. It's like, I'm safer here than in America as it relates to Antifa, because here they're classified as a terrorist organization and treated as such because because they hijacked a couple planes back in the 70s. A few high profile kidnappings, some bombings, a couple plane jackings, and the German people and the German government said enough of the bullshit, classified them as a terrorist organization, and they take that shit seriously now. In America, it's not like that. They're operating with impunity. And in fact, they're actually celebrated by the left. So I'm actually less concerned about my own personal safety in like doing these streams and stuff here than I am in America, which is sad. But then BLM, they do a different tactic. They don't do propaganda by the deed or propaganda of the deed. I can't remember which one it was. They use a Maoist tactic, which is called mass line communication, which is they take an otherwise good concept, like racism, for example. I mean, we can all agree here that we are against racism. Okay, we're all on the same page with respect to that. But then they'll take that, form an organization like BLM, and then inject communism into it. Mm-hmm. And so they take an idea that's universally celebrated and accepted, and then inject communism into it, so as to convince everybody that communism should also be universally accepted and celebrated. And that's what BLM is. They take this thing where we all are against police brutality. We're all against racism. We can all agree on that. We can all agree that perhaps there's some police training or police reform or police philosophy that needs to be reconsidered. At least we can all agree that a conversation there needs to happen, and we can shake out what that looks like at the end of the day. But I think we can all agree, hey, let's come to the table and all talk and see if we can make things better for everybody. But then they take that and inject it with communism, and then we're left to sift through all the bullshit. And it's so evil because they're, like Ben Shapiro, when he accused Piers Morgan of standing on the corpses of dead kids to get his message across. It's like they're standing on the corpses of murdered blacks. And some of them weren't murdered. Some of them were. They're also standing on the corpses of all of the police officers who have been murdered themselves in the line of duty. It's just truly evil. So I don't think it's confirmation bias. It's them pulling their communist bullshit tactics, and us sitting here having to go, what's the truth? So it's I would say, if anything, it's the opposite. We should be celebrating the fact that we're willing to be patient. We're willing to look at the facts, and we're willing to determine the truth. And it's the truth, which is that to which we're committed. And we don't want to have our own confirmation bias get in the way. But the people, we wouldn't have to be dealing with this shit if they weren't using the issue of racism to push their ulterior motives through communistic tactics. And in the case of BLM specifically, it's mass line communication, which again is a Maoist tactic.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of, they're using the BLM moniker as a means to basically browbeat you into agreement with this stuff. That if you don't agree with this, then you don't agree with BLM, and you don't think Black Lives Matter, and therefore you're a racist. And it's this common trope. It's this common tactic of trying to character assassinate, and we've seen Antifa doing this. I'm just here to punch Nazis, and calling anybody who basically doesn't agree with you a Nazi, calling anybody who dares not just fall in line with everything you have to say.
Categorically agree.
Yeah. And we have gotten to the point now where, okay, so there was a news article today that a social worker in Seattle who was responding to a crime was stabbed to death. And it's like, okay, but this is what you guys want. You want these people to be the ones responding to these crimes, unarmed, going out there and trying to deal with people who will try to kill them. And now somebody has died. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, what do they really want, right? And you look back in history, and what Antifa wanted was they wanted enough chaos for communism to seem like the better option, right? That people would then say, we need this government control. We need government to lock down and get rid of these chaotic people, these anarchists, and then communist becomes the better option. And it's the same thing I think about Obamacare, about the ACA. I think the ACA was never designed to be the end-all be-all. I think it was designed to be a placeholder to make healthcare so bad that even people on the right would say anything is better than this, and universal health care would be cheaper. And that's the exact tactic Bernie Sanders has taken. Universal health care would be cheaper than what we have now. But what we have now is what you guys wanted 10 years ago. It's not better than a free market solution, but it's better than what we have now, which people don't, people aren't looking at the true alternatives. They're looking at what will make my life even a little bit better. And let's go with that, because the option that would actually make your life fully better is probably unattainable, right? Getting a free market healthcare system in this country is at this point probably unattainable, to where a universal healthcare system is actually the preferable option over the system that we have now. But it's the system that they wanted just 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I mean, I think I would break those out into two different tactics. Yeah, one of them is destroying a good thing to replace it with something else which is worse, but they view as being moral. And this is a philosophical issue that the left has, which is that the moral is not necessarily the good. So we look at something like free markets and we say, okay, this is great, but how much richer can we really be? But they look at it and go, okay, well, we can be a lot richer, but there's all this wealth inequality. That's totally immoral. And it's like, well, like we're all better off for it, even if we're not all, ostensibly equal, which will never happen. That's a metaphysical impossibility. But so their morality is not in line with the good necessarily. So that's one issue. I think the other issue is that they also are taking an incremental approach. This is something I wish the right would do, but the right doesn't take an incremental approach because they're not trying to approach anything. All they're trying to do is not let the left do their chicanery and all of their bullshit,
So you're about to get close to one of my favorite words,
which is
incrementalism.
Yeah. The left.
If you watch SBU, you've heard me use that term billions of times. And Kyle, to the point where Kyle laughs every time he hears it now, because I've argued exactly this on the right, is that a large portion of our policy is that we're all or nothing, right? We're either trying to get everything or we're trying to get nothing. And the left has taken that incremental approach over the last 50, 60 years to slowly chipping away, to slowly getting closer and closer to what they want, so that they're never considered extreme, right? Because if you just are pushing a little bit, you're always just considered moderate. But the moderate portion of it moves as the line moves, right? So if I just want to go this little bit further, it's still moderate. But we're getting to where what would have been 60 years ago would have been an extreme radical position. That's now considered moderate in the United States on the left.
Yeah.
And the right is, what I've said is, look, the left, if this was a football game, it's the fourth quarter and there's 2 minutes left. We're down by 5 and the other team has the ball and we're trying to throw Hail Marys while we're on defense. It's like, we're not moving. We're not progressing. We're not getting closer to our goal. We're trying to prevent them from getting closer to their goal, while at the same time,
we don't even really have one.
Yeah, it's like the people on the right. It's either, okay, we're going to completely abolish abortion, or we're going to keep all abortion legal whatsoever, right? There's not, hey, what can we chip away at it a little bit? Can we get a little closer, a little less abortion? Like I agree. I want no abortion, but I would take less. right? Less would be good. Less is better than what we have now. But that's not the options we have from the people on the right, from policymakers on the right. It's either nothing, we get rid of abortion completely, or it stays as is and we just keep going status quo.
Yeah, but I mean, I would even want the right to have any sort of a more comprehensive and integrated vision for what they're advocating.
Yeah.
You know, what are we going for? Are we going for free markets? What does that mean? How free? Laissez-faire capitalism? Or are we compassionate conservatives where we want a nice cushy social security system and we're basically doing we're basically agreeing. I mean, compassionate conservatism is basically just, no, left, we agree with you. We just think we can do your socialist policies better than you. You know, that's basically compassionate conservatism. Which is just, it's just, you're never going to win that way. Like, you have to champion the moral good of free markets and then advocate for that and do it openly, do it proudly, and most importantly, don't be ashamed about it. Because so many people on the right are ashamed. Like, yeah, no, free markets, they're not moral. You know, there's going to be a lot of bad things, but you know, they work. It's pragmatic. That does not win the hearts and minds of people. They don't give a shit about that. You know, freedom, individual rights, and liberty, that is a moral good, and we should be championing that on the right. And I do agree with you about that we should be having, we need to be more incremental ourselves, but we should have an end goal. Yeah. And I call this, the way I conceptualize this in my head with respect to the right is they have like I'm holding out for a management position mentality, where it's like the left is working hard, they're showing up early, they're staying late, they're taking their promotions, and, you know, in 20 years, they're the director, you know, or the VP of something. And meanwhile, the Republican is over here, still a line worker, because they've been holding them out, their cousin Eddie holding out for a management position for the last 10 years. You know, they're just waiting for the perfect, you know, just waiting for the stars align, and then everything will be fine, you know. And like the I don't know, you're probably not at all familiar with the objectivist community, which is like Ayn Rand's philosophy, but like they're like always criticizing everybody. It's like, guys, okay, we can get some politicians that are like a little bit better each time, and we can be pushing for that. You know, I don't even consider myself a part of that community because they annoy the shit out of me, frankly. But
the people who are never happy with anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, seriously, I mean, what do you expect? Like, we're in 2024, we're going to have a, you know, laissez-faire capitalist objectivist presidential candidate. Is that really what you expect? They are the I'm holding out for management position party. Yep. You know?
Well, and you know, my new thing, and I told this to my kids the other day, and it's, you know, don't let, you know, it kind of comes off of the don't let perfect be the enemy of good, is don't take 0 because you can't get 100, right? Like, there's like 90% is still good, right? 50% is still better than what we have now. Don't take 0 because you can't get 100. So the reason this came about the other day is my kids had spilled some popcorn on the floor, and some of it had gotten mushed into the carpet to where we would need to get the vacuum cleaner. But most of it was still whole kernels that they could pick up, throw in the trash, or didn't need to be vacuumed up. And my kids, well, we're not going to pick it up because this little bit of it needs to be vacuumed. Well, don't not do all of the work because you can't do some of it, right? So we've gotten to the point now with
I like that, man. I'm gonna try to use that. So for some reason, I don't think my wife is gonna go for the Pareto 80-20 principle on cleaning up a mess on the carpet.
Yeah, exactly.
He's gonna say, "Get the damn vacuum cleaner."
But well, and again, it wasn't, hey, we're not going to come back and do this later, but let's do what we can do now. Right. And there's times when we've seen that Republicans have had the opportunity to strike and take a little win and have refused to do so. And it's like kind of like, you know, COVID relief right now. Republicans have an opportunity right now to shift the narrative. They had an opportunity 6 months ago to shift the narrative. And instead it was, and Nancy Pelosi did the same thing on the left, but and both sides went either we're going to get exactly what we want or everybody's going to get nothing, right? And there was room to come in the middle and Republicans to say, hey, you know what? We agree that this COVID relief is so important right now that we're going to make a few concessions to make sure we get 50% of what we want, or we're going to get 60% of what we want, and we're going to give up some to get what we want. And so we'll be the people that are actually helping out small business owners. We'll be the people. And yes, they've played the Pelosi blame game very well, but it only works if you're the savior in that situation, right? Because if you're not the savior, then you're also the devil.
I mean, I think that's a unique scenario in which there's just no winning, because you're going to give the left their bullshit, and they're holding all that ransom, and so it's tantamount to negotiating with, I should say, metaphorical to negotiating with terrorists, right? You're rewarding that behavior in some sense, but on the other hand, you're going to get blamed for it. So you're either rewarding bad behavior or getting blamed for something which is not your fault. And then at that point, it just breaks down on party lines. So
but
I would err on the side. In that instance, I would err on the side of, okay, yeah, we can negotiate, but there's certain things upon which we can't negotiate.
Well, and that's fine. That's fine to say that there's certain things, right? Like we're going to keep certain things off the table, and that's negotiating tactics, right? But there was no negotiation. There was the House bill and there was the Senate bill, and there was nothing in between. There was zero work to try to get closer to an end goal that would have actually worked, that both sides could have agreed to. And what the right did very well on the first Relief Act is they did a good job of advertising where all that money went, all that bullshit money went that the left put in there.
Right.
Hey, it went to the Kennedy Center. Oh, it went here. Oh, it went there. I don't agree with the state bailouts, okay? I don't agree with that. I don't think California should get a bailout because they mismanage their funding, right? But there is room to say, hey, we can put some money towards this or that and get closer. And then simply say, hey, this is the money the Democrats demanded be in here. Instead of going to the people to get money for them, it went to the Kennedy Centers, and it went to this, and it went to that. And this is money that you're spending that didn't go to you, that went to their special interest, and there was room for that. But we didn't get that. We got nothing. And, I get on Twitter, and people will say, well, Nancy Pelosi put this bill forward, and it's like, okay, but that's not her job, right? The job is not to put a bill forward. The job is not to pass a bill through the House. The job is to get laws enacted. That's the job. And so saying that, Senator A or Congressman B put this bill forward that would completely get rid of abortion. Okay. Is abortion gone? No? Okay, good. He did nothing. He accomplished jack shit nothing. Writing the bill was pointless unless it gets signed by the fucking president and put into law.
Yeah. Agreed. I think the right, they did a good job with a lot of the messaging and the advertising around these bills. But I mean, again, this is a situation where I have to question my confirmation bias, because am I just surrounding myself in an echo chamber where I hear these things constantly and I'm like, oh yeah, good. I'm glad they said that. And they're championing it. I would like to see him champion it more. I'd like to see him go on the offense more. I would like to see them put forward a bill which addresses all the pork and all the bullshit that gets put into these directly. So then they can pin it on the left and say, look, they are overtly and outwardly rejecting this, But the problem is, I think there's too many Republicans in office right now who are themselves doing the same thing and serving their own interests and letting lobbyists grease their palms. We have to purge these people from the party. And we need to be the party of, and I think we're on that path, and we need to be the party of the people. We need to be the ethical party. We need to move away from lobbying, because the left isn't going to do this. They're just going to continue down this path. And the more we can put them on blast for doing all these things, the better we're all going to be off. And I think the more people are going to say, you know what? I'm willing to say I'm on the right now. I'm not on the left anymore. I can't be on that side.
It's one thing, right? Like, and it's kind of like what I went to war with the Texas GOP over, right? I am a fiscal conservative. I think the government needs to do less. I think we need to spend less money. I think we need to balance our budget. But the people on the right who actually adhere to those principles, the Chip Roys, the Thomas Masseys, the Rand Pauls, are ostracized by most people on the right. Thomas Massie got blown up by simply demanding that Congress come and actually vote in person on a $3 trillion bill, because he wouldn't just, unanimously let it go through. He got blown up by people on the right because he said, no, Congress needs to actually come here in person And every single member of Congress needs to go on record and vote for this. He ended up voting for the bill, but the only thing he wouldn't do is he wouldn't allow it to go through on unanimous consent so that nobody had to show up. And I don't think that's too much to ask, right? I don't think it's too much to ask that Thomas Massie said, hey, look, you are an elected official. You need to actually come here and do your fucking job. Chip Roy has said the same thing. Rand Paul has said the same thing. And they get ostracized even by people on the right. And we have Mike Lee, who has been praised by President Trump, who has been praised by the Federalist Society, who is thought to be, a good candidate for the Supreme Court, who just the other day pushed through with unanimous consent a bill to basically hand more jobs over to foreign workers and expand the H-1B process. And I am not against the H-1B process, but I do think there needs to be limitations on it. And when we talk, my funniest thing to do now on Twitter is use their own tactics against them. So they love to talk about the Nordic countries. So I love to, point out where the Nordic countries are different than us. Nordic countries have super low corporate tax rates. Nordic countries have super strict immigration laws. Nordic countries have, very limited access to healthcare. Even in their universal healthcare system, it's not, you can just do whatever you want. You can just, get any healthcare you need. It's you can go get, it's basically like our dental care is here. You can go get a cleaning twice a year and you can get these, these few little things, but you're not going to get everything. But whenever they say, we should be like the Nordic countries. Okay, so you want a corporate tax rate around 12%. Or, hey, you want no minimum wage laws whatsoever, because those are all things that exist inside these Nordic countries. And they don't know what to say.
Yeah. Europe has way more strict immigration laws than America. I think this is something that I love to talk to people about, because they don't understand what the left is like in Europe. They're so much more practical. I much prefer the left in Europe, the European left, than I do the American left. And I never thought I would ever find myself saying that, because I always regarded it as on this very basic spectrum. You have like the American, you have like right and left, right? And then like in between, you've got like the American center, and then like the European center is left of the American center. So they're just more leftist. That's complete bullshit. It's a totally different system over here. Mm-hmm. And they're way more practical about immigration, about all these like various different kinds of things. Like here's a great example. When Corona happened, they shut down the borders. Well, there's all these immigrants that come over from Poland, the seasonal immigrants, which in America we don't have, because once you get to America from Mexico, you're there. You can't go back, like you can't go back and just keep crossing the border all the time. So like if we had seasonal immigration laws in place to make it easier for people to come for a few months for harvest and then go back, right? That would be a huge boon. Ironically, Cesar Chavez was the one that helped get rid of that, which is, his slogan was, his union slogan out in California was "Si se puede," which means yes, one can. And that is in reference to, yes, one can tell them to not come across and take our labor. It
is funny to me that they're using this as a means to like argue for open immigration, when they definitely were not arguing for open immigration back then. They were arguing for Hispanic rights, but Hispanics who were already here, who were U.S. citizens, and for them to get those jobs, not people coming across the border who were going to make, who were going to get $2 an hour. They were arguing that, hey, no, you need to pay American workers first and give us the jobs. And then, if there's not enough of us to fill it, to the point where bodies were found in the desert, burned to a crisp, and that were associated with people from that movement.
Well, it was really a war on the left. It was like two different leftist encampments warring against each other. It was the leftist unions in California warring against immigrants. And then suddenly they changed their tune and they're like, oh, hey, you know what? Cesar Chavez, he's still our hero, our union labor hero. But, now we're also open immigration. They changed the tune in the 90s. And what's funny is so Si se puede was Cesar Chavez a saying for, I think it was the United Farm Workers of America, if I believe. And And Si Se Puede, again, is in reference to, yes, one can like keep the borders closed and kick these people the hell out of the country and keep them from coming in so we can have our artificially inflated union labor costs. And then Obama attributed, yes, we can, to that.
Yeah.
So it's just like multiple layers of irony and contradiction.
It's really funny to hear him talk about that, because I usually just link to the articles of the supposed murders of illegal immigrants in California when they say that of that group that were attributed to Cesar Chavez's group, and they just what? Huh? No. And they can't believe it because they don't know history. Again, there's no knowledge of history here. There's no knowledge that, a lot of the tactics that they're currently taking of putting your enemies on a list and banning books and banning words and banning people from owning guns and, citizenry from owning guns and demanding
erasing cultural history.
Yeah, that a lot of this follows right along the line of what Lenin did, of what Mao did, of what Hitler did. And there's just all these specific historical references that it's like, guys, seriously, like I need you guys to understand that you guys want to say that we're right in line with Hitler, but yet you guys historically are following right along the path that these guys followed of demonizing anybody that wouldn't follow right along with you. One of the things Hitler pushed for was that Germans would get a guaranteed job, guaranteed wages, guaranteed housing, guaranteed, and that it was, yes, he argued that it was the Jewish people and these other immigrants that were the reason the Germans couldn't get it, and he victimized them, but he was arguing for a lot of these same tactics that people on the left are arguing for now. And it's stuff that's really scary, because like my wife is looking at me like, go buy whatever guns you want, go buy whatever ammo you need to get, stock up on it now, have it, because she is so scared that there's going to be somebody knocking at our door, trying to haul us off in the middle of the night, that, she is just worried about it, sick, because we're seeing so many people say, hey, we need to go get them. We need to go take care of them. We need to put them on a list, make sure they can't get jobs again, make sure they can't get loans again, make sure they don't have access to banks again, and it's so to the point where it's looking more and more like the Civil War is coming.
Yeah. It's hard for me to weigh in on that because every time I go back to the US, I land there and I realize just how amazing America is and Americans, and they're so nice and everything is so amazing. And I'm just like, wow, this is totally in contradiction to all the podcasts I'm listening to, even the content I'm producing, and it's like, we can be talking about these things. And then I fly into Austin and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, brisket tacos, America, and it's amazing. But, yeah, and it's also so weird because in Europe we just don't have this phenomenon fundamentally. Like I don't know. I mean, people kind of don't care about politics, but I think that's because a cultural staple of being American is politics. In Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville, which I believe he published in 1833, something around there, if I'm not mistaken. He traveled as a French guy, traveled around America, mostly up in the Northeast, and one of the things that he discussed was like, even when you go out into the woods and you've got some guy living out in the woods in Michigan in a cabin and hunting traps for a living, sells fur coat, fur for a living, whatever. Even he will he'll go to church on Sunday, but then he's reading about politics afterwards. This is in the early 1800s. And I think that's a cultural staple of Americans is that we care deeply about politics. We're very dramatic about it. And by the way, Russ is in the chat. Can you see the chat from your broadcast studio?
Yeah, I see it.
Russ? Yeah. Okay, cool. Are you able to comment?
No, because I'm not signed in.
Okay.
I can chat to you privately. And so, we've been chatting back and forth about how much we dislike Russ and, all the things about Russ that really annoy us. But, but I can't, comment to Russ directly.
Got it. Okay, cool. And yeah, no worries. So dear listeners, just so you know, I think we'll be out of here in about 10 minutes or so. But anyways, yeah, I mean, Europe has such a storied history and such deep cultures that go back generations. This village that I'm in now, like my wife, she honestly, she doesn't even know where her family came from before this village. Like, can't even, we don't even know. Because it goes back that many generations, and it's such a deep-seated culture, and people kind of just go along with it, and a war breaks out every couple decades, and people just live with it, and then life goes on, and so it's just so bizarre to me that Americans are very, I don't want to say dramatic, we're just hyper concerned about politics. And I think we should remind ourselves of that. There's other. Go ahead.
I mean, there gets to a point where you just want to live your life, right? Like, I've gotten to that point kind of with all this election news. It's like, I care. Like, I want Trump to win. Don't get me wrong. Like, it would definitely be better for me that Trump won. It would be better for my life. It would be better for the industry that I work in. There's a lot of positive aspects to a Trump victory. But at the same time, I've just gotten so fatigued with it. And I want to go on living my life at this point. Like, I have a wife, I have kids, we went to a sports banquet for my son last night because, he played football this year. And it's like, at some point in time, I just want to get back to actually spending time with my kids and living my life and being able to focus on living my life. And, it's like the whole, there's this new meme going around that the left has one good meme. It's of a serf and a peasant, and the serf is saying we need to improve conditions somewhat. And the other peasant looks at him and goes, yet you live within this society, huh? Interesting. And it's basically them trying to say that, the right doesn't want to improve society at all. And we want to improve society. Our ideas for improving society are just different than theirs, right? Like, I want better education in the United States. I want fundamentally better education. I don't think further going into the monopoly of public education is the better way to get better education. I don't think public monopoly serves the purpose there. I think it's better to start restricting that monopoly, giving the consumer more power, more choice, which then allows for the system to get better. It creates competition. Competition makes us better. And I think for the left, we're seeing, they think the option is, we just need to give more money to the schools. We've tried that. We've tried that effort. It didn't work, right? Giving more money to schools just made schools want more money. And I don't think teachers, I think teachers should make a livable wage, but a livable wage to me is a fluctuating point, right? A livable wage in Dime Box, Texas versus a livable wage in Los Angeles, California are two different numbers drastically. Yeah. So unless we're willing, it's for all the people who say, oh, well, Seattle put in a $15 minimum wage, so everywhere should be able to do that. Seattle is not everywhere else, right? The market in Seattle, the labor market in Seattle is fundamentally different than the labor market everywhere else. The labor market here in Midland, Odessa, where our McDonald's workers make $12 an hour starting pay, but that's not a livable wage here, right? Because the apartments are so damn expensive to rent here that you can't rent an apartment on $12 an hour. That's high school kid wages. So it's just a difference. Like, we can't, having this idea that there's this one size fit all solution is idiotic, is moronic, is stupid. And we need to get back to a point where we say, oh, hey, Seattle has a $15 minimum wage. Good for Seattle. But maybe Texas doesn't need to have that, right? And maybe Dime Box should get to decide for Dime Box what Dime Box does. Because I bet there's homeless people in Seattle, and you've made this point 1,000 times, right? That basically increasing the minimum wage makes those jobs illegal. And I bet you there's people in Seattle, there's homeless people who would work for less than $15 an hour to make some money, but instead can make no money because they can't work. They can't get a job that's deemed worthy of $15 an hour.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to pitch something to you, Ross, because Russ asked something in the chat. But first, yeah, I mean, these ideas of living wage, Ayn Rand wrote about this thing called anti-concepts, and she writes, an anti-concept is an unnecessarily and rationally unusable term designed to replace and obliterate some legitimate concept. The use of anti-concepts give the listeners a sense of approximate understanding, but in the realm of cognition, nothing is as bad as the approximate. And basically, she goes on to say that you're taking and the left does this. They do this with living wage, social justice, all this sort of crap. lived experience,
Mhm.
as if living and experience are somehow two different things. Um, uh, so basically they take these little things which are basically either meaningless or good, and then package it together with something else that they can inject their ideas into it. And there was something else I was going to say. Yeah, this goes back to this whole mass line communication, which is, oh, what was your example that you had given before about, oh yeah, they're like, oh yeah, don't you think society needs to be improved? Here's the thing. Yeah, we do. And we know it can. And we know it can objectively improve, but their definition of improve is not objective, it's subjective. Improvement to them means something totally different. What it means is moving towards socialism, moving towards communism, moving towards their end goals. It doesn't mean becoming wealthier, becoming richer, having more opportunities, being able to live on even less money. Henry Ford famously paid his factory workers $2,500 a week in today's money, because he didn't have to pay payroll tax. He didn't have to pay, nobody had to pay income tax. So they were factory workers were famously making, Henry Ford was paying the highest wages in the world.
Yeah.
We're making, by today's standards, six figures. So anyways, that's just a good example. Like they when they say you have to be careful. What do you mean by improve? Specifically, what do you mean by that?
Well, and I can point to it in my life, right? Like everybody always wants to say, "Oh, we need this livable wage. We need this number." I had a wife and 3 kids, and I made $8.50 an hour, and we lived. And we weren't buying a new car every year. We weren't living in a 7,000 square foot house, but we survived. We were able to make it. And my wife and I were going to school. We were doing other things, and it was a means. But the job I took making that money was a job where I made very little, but I learned a lot. The experience from that job is what got me to where I am today, making well over 6 figures. But without that job, I don't get here, right? I needed that foot in the door. I needed that step. I needed that employer. And this was the type, I'll give you an example of how this guy was. I destroyed, within my first 3 weeks there, I completely destroyed about a $30,000 piece of equipment. And he basically just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Oh, okay, well, you're learning." And went about his day and went about and then taught me what I did wrong and what I should have done to do it correctly. So yeah, he paid me jack crap, but he paid me jack crap because he knew that he was going to suffer other expenses because of me, right?
Yeah.
That I was going to cost him money in either lack of production because I didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't going to be able to perform at a reasonable level. And his whole thing was, okay, I'm going to pay you a little bit. I'm going to, pay you something. You're going to have a job. And and he was a guy who like, okay, you could work as much overtime as you wanted. You could come in on the weekends. He gave me a key to the building. I could work every hour of the day. He didn't care. He'd pay me as much overtime as I could earn, right? As long as I was being productive in that amount of time. But the amount of money I cost him by screwing stuff up or doing stuff wrong or whatever else was all just part of his calculation and what he was paying me. And because that was part of it, is he was going to train me and he was going to then reap the rewards later he gave me raises. I ended up making $14.50 an hour working for him by the time I was all said and done. But I was making him a lot more money because he trained me, because he put this time and this effort into me. But without that job, where literally for the first 2 months, my task every morning was to vacuum June bugs off the sidewalk in front of the building. That was my task every morning for 2 hours a day. I would take a shop vac and vacuum up the dead June bugs off the sidewalk of his building. He paid me 2 hours of labor to vacuum up dead June bugs.
Yeah.
But without that job, I don't get where I am today.
Totally. And you'll circle back and trigger Kyle by talking about incrementalism. I mean, you want to talk about incrementalism. I mean, there's no worse thing for that than something like a $15. You wouldn't have gotten that. Nobody's going to pay you $15 an hour to vacuum up June bugs off the front of the building. That job doesn't even exist. Your legs are cut out from under you. Minimum wage at a certain point, we're all cousin Eddie waiting up for manager position because that's all anybody can afford to pay. So somebody with those kinds of skills.
You want to just full on and incrementalize this?
Oh yeah, totally.
I wrote a policy for incremental minimum wage.
Okay.
16 to 18, 425. 18 to 25, 625. 25 plus 725.
Okay. So you're gonna form the incrementalist party?
Yeah, so I'm going to form the incrementalist party. I'm just going full on incremental here. Everything about me is incremental, right? Like my life is all about incremental. I'm just incrementally getting more children. I'm just incrementally getting more money. I'm just incrementally getting more involved in politics. I'm just incremental in every facet of my life at this point. But
incrementally buying more ammo.
So I would love to get rid of minimum wage altogether. But let's be fair, it's not going to happen, right? Like so. I did this in my campaign. I walked up to people and they're like, well, you don't want to get fully rid of abortion. It's like, no, that's incorrect. I do want to get fully rid of abortion, but we're not going to do that right now. So I could sit here and I could tell you that we're going to get fully rid of abortion. And I could promise you I'm going to go do this in Congress and never achieve it. Or I could go there and get rid of 20% of abortion, 30% of abortion.
Yeah, you said that was an issue, like when you were running for Congress, where people were like, "How dare you not try to completely and outright ban it?" And you're like, "Guys, we need to have a more practical approach to this."
Yeah, like I literally, that was a fight I had with people, was that I wasn't fully, committed, and it was like, no, I want these things. I want no minimum wage. I want all these things, but I recognize reality. Right? I want Trump to win. I think he should, but I recognize reality that he's probably not going to. Right? It's not wrong to recognize reality and live within it and work within it. Right?
It's not only not wrong, it's required for one's survival and mental health. And like you were talking about earlier, it's like, trying to live your life and pursue your values. And at a certain point, you've got to do these things. We live in reality. We don't live in Fox News HQ where we have to worry about these things constantly. You have a life and you should be pursuing that. I know you have to go, Russ, here in a minute, but Russ asked a question. I'm gonna toss it to you at first. Okay. He says, thoughts on Alito moving the Pennsylvania date up to the 8th. Quote, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has made a critical decision which may signal that the court's willingness to hear a controversial case attempting to flip Pennsylvania's 2020 election, end quote. Quoting again, originally Alito set a Wednesday deadline for the state to respond to GOP Rep. Mike Kelly's lawsuit alleging that a 2019 election reform known as Act 77 violates both the state and federal constitutions by creating a so-called no excuse mail-in voting regime.
I think that's very promising. And I think that goes back to what you were talking about, that the Supreme Court's going to be one of our realistic options. Now, what I think that goes back to is if the court picks it up and the court says, okay, this was illegal, it's going to push it back to the state legislature to choose the electors in that case, because they're not going to hold a re-election, right? They're not going to rehold the election. It's going to be that the state legislators at that point would then pick the electors for the state of Pennsylvania. Now, again, the problem here is we need more than Pennsylvania, right? Pennsylvania doesn't do it. We need Pennsylvania and Georgia, or Pennsylvania and Michigan, or Pennsylvania and Arizona. We got to get more than just one.
Or Nevada or Wisconsin.
So I think Nevada, Wisconsin, I think the ships, there's again, I'm not saying that there's not evidence of fraud there. I don't want people to say that I'm just saying, oh, no fraud. There's no fraud in this election. I'm saying, is there enough fraud, and is it provable enough that we can flip the election, especially after the court in Arizona said, yeah, it's fine for dead people to vote so long as they may have voted before they died. Okay, that's horseshit, right? That's horseshit, but that's what the court said. But I do want to go just for a second, and I hope I answered that, Russ, for you, at least where I'm at on it. I think it's a good sign, but I think we need more yet, and I don't think it's enough. So it doesn't really move me in terms of my overall hope for the election. It puts me in a place where I'm going, okay, maybe the next election will be better, but in terms of this election, I'm still in the range of it's still probably going to be. Yeah, okay, Russ is saying, hey, if one state falls, I think they all do. And that's possible. Again, that's possible. I do think one state falling makes it much more likely that another one does. I do think that's valid. That's a valid, point. But we need that first domino to tip. And until that domino has not tipped as of yet. Yeah. But I do want to get back to that minimum wage idea for a minute. I want to hear your opinion on this, because my idea here is, knowing that we're never going to get rid of minimum wage. It's not going to happen, right? Dems are never going to let it happen. Minimum wage is never going to go away. And even if we somehow wrote a law and got it to pass, the courts would block it, right? The Ninth Circuit would claim that all these low-income people are being harmed by it, so we can't do it. So about putting a staged and incremental minimum wage in place, my goal here is to incentivize employers to hire young people and give them experience. As we just talked about, with me getting that job vacuuming up June bugs, but also learning oil field shit in the meantime and being able to get a better job. I think we need to get 16, 17, 8-year-olds working again, getting some experience, getting some jobs. And I do think that employers, look, a 16, 17, 18-year-olds are not very reliable. They're not super hardworking, right? Most of them on average. So making people pay them $15 an hour is highly unfair. And then for a 18 to 25-year-old, you get that little bit of a bump, but still the 18 is kind of when you can get that first real job and you can actually start learning a tradable skill. So welding or working in the oil field or a lot of these jobs you can't get until you're 18. So again, giving you incentive to hire those people to get that first job in the industry and allow them to try it out, allow them to have that benefit. And then my point is, like I make to a lot of people, if by 25, you're still making minimum wage, that's kind of your own fault.
Yeah, they want to move to this, and Yang talked a lot about this. And Ross, you tell me when you have to go, because I can go all night. But oh, yeah. Okay. So Russ just messaged me in DM saying he wanted my thoughts on Alito. I mean, yeah, I think it's good. Him and I believe it's Clarence Thomas have been on Pennsylvania's ass about election fraud for a long time. They've made public comments about it. As far as I understand, I'm not 100% sure about that. I'll be totally candid here. I saw that on a poll thread, so take that for what you will. That Clarence Thomas is already on Pennsylvania's ass. So yeah, maybe they'll hear Pennsylvania. I'm interested to see if this extrapolates out to other states as well. If it sets a precedent in Pennsylvania, if, for example, they say ballots delivered after the 8 p.m. deadline in Pennsylvania nullifies the ballots that were delivered after the 8 p.m. deadline in the other states, like Michigan. That's where I think things get interesting is, okay, does this precedent carry over across state lines? And that's where I think things could get interesting. And then what you had just asked me about minimum wage.
About an incremental minimum wage.
And my thoughts on it.
Yeah, about for 16 to 18, $6.25 an hour, 18 to 25, $6.25 an hour, 25 plus $7.25 an hour.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously, the end goal is no minimum wage, but in the foreseeable future, that ain't happening. I think that's a good next best option. I think that it should also be up to the states themselves. But you're operating at the state level, so the state should be able to set that themselves, like incremental okay. So if we could start with like federal incremental, that would be better than what we have now. Yeah. If we could then take that to state incremental and the states determine what those increments are, that's even better. And then if you could then, let businesses set their own, that would be the next best. And then just doing away with it entirely would be the best thing. And always reminding people that where did minimum wage come from in the beginning? Racist policies to keep blacks from working in car factories in Detroit.
Yep. And I point that out. I have that article you sent me, and then I have further research from Herbert Hill, the former labor director of the NAACP for 40 years, where he blasts minimum wage and union memberships in the North, and the title has the N-word in it, so a lot of people are like, "Oh, somebody using the N-word. What is this? One of your white supremacists?" And it's like,
"Oh, you're a Nazi."
It's Herbert Hill, the labor director of the NAACP, who was very much so a black guy. Yeah. I mean, he's using that word, not me. And that's just, that at the time when he wrote that, because he wrote that in 1956, I believe, that was common vernacular.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So Russ says, in and of itself, it means nothing. It does indicate a predilection for the SC to get involved, and that is good. And it does set up a pathway for the first domino to fall. I totally agree. I totally agree.
We need that first domino to fall. And if the first domino falls, then then everything is on the table. But until we actually see that first domino to fall, it's just regurgitating a lot of the same.
Yeah. And one more thing, really quick. I want to say, I remember what I was getting at. So here in Europe, they have this, like, and Yang was pushing this, they have this sort of thing where it's like minimum wage doesn't really matter out here. In fact, Sweden doesn't even have a minimum wage. They have no minimum wage.
Just Norway.
Neither does Norway. And it kind of doesn't matter because at a young age, you're kind of siphoned out into one of two paths here in Europe. You either go this, you either get selected to go to gymnasium. I think now a lot of states in Germany specifically, you can choose which school your kid goes to if you continue on to gymnasium, or if you take an apprenticeship. And an apprenticeship is blue collar trade. You learn to be an electrician, you learn to be a plumber, you learn to be a welder, you learn to be a nurse, or you work at a salon or whatever. And it's a 2-year program. But the problem with that is it creates these just incredibly rigid labor markets where you're 16 or 14 rather, and you're finishing school and you're like, okay, I like electricity. I think I want to be an electrician. You do a 2-year apprenticeship. Now you're an electrician. You're making a little bit of money. By 18. You're making $15 an hour, $20 an hour, $25 an hour. And that's about all you're going to make. You can't go to university because you're not qualified. You never got your Abitur, which is like our version of a high school diploma. Mm-hmm. And there's it's like a glass ceiling. You can't ascend beyond a certain level. And that is your life path. And my brother-in-law is stuck in that life path. And he has other, things to which he would like to aspire. I mean, what happens if you become an electrician and then you're like, I actually want to get a degree in electrical engineering?
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen. In America, you can go to just like what you did and your wife did. You can go to community college and then you can transfer to a proper 4-year university. You can have an electrical engineering degree and be an electrical engineer. 4 years later, you're gonna have some debt, or maybe you choose a more affordable option because you don't want to saddle yourself with that debt. But there's paths which you can go. There's options available to you. In Europe, it's not like that. And this is what they're proposing. They want everybody to go into these little blue collar jobs where it's a stay in your lane society. Don't deviate. Don't try to become rich. Don't try to start a business. Stay in your lane. Be your little blue collar worker self. Pay for the few elite who get to go to university. You get to pay their tuition for them, which is a total reversal of justice, which is how it works in Europe. It's like such a small percentage of people go to university. And then you have the working man, the middle class, paying for their tuition. And everyone in America is like, the moral thing to do is free college tuition. Oh, the moral thing to do is burden the middle class, blue collar workers with paying the tuition of the small elites who actually go to university. And almost nobody can because the government can't afford it, because now university tuition is competing against a highway infrastructure project for funding.
Oh, AOC actually red-pilled herself a little bit yesterday on that. She goes, the rate of tuition is rising way too fast. And it was like, go on.
She's
you're getting there.
The hamster wheel is running.
Yeah. So Russ, I am gonna call it. I do have some family stuff to do, and I have, unfortunately, homework.
Sure, man. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, and it's getting late here. It's 10 o'clock, so on a school night for me. So
thanks for bringing me on. We'll try to do this a little more often. Russ, we did say nothing but horrible things about you in the private chat. So just know that was there, and we're always thinking of you.
Thanks, Russ. Russ says great job, gentlemen. Thank you so much, man. Yeah, and dude, I had fun, Ross. Maybe we can do this more often.
Yeah, we'll try it.
All right, cool. Sounds good.
Thanks, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a good week. Later.